here with Constance, Choi, head of legal counsel for Payward, and Ruby Kalson-Bremer, who's the community manager for Payward as well. They run the Kraken virtual currency exchange. Today we're going to talk about, I guess, the past, present, and future legal regulations that are in place for virtual currency, where it's been, where it's at, and where it's headed.
Absolutely. I'm happy to share some on the ground intel about all three.
Great. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. With the past kind of landscape for virtual currency, what did people how did people view it before? Because I know we had, at least from my limited knowledge, we kind of had Zynga, Facebook, like all these virtual games had currency where you could purchase in-game currency, but I don't think you could take it out prior to this, right? Like you just bought into it.
Well, so the currencies, the in-game currencies you just described are kind of the predecessor to the new emerging virtual currencies. So, World of Warcraft Gold or Linden dollars. And, these were largely, very innovative and highly unregulated spaces. So, in Bitcoin itself, even though that was, that began in, I believe, 2009, it took a few years for it to reach the mainstream. I think we are there now. But even a year ago or 2 years ago, you would have seen Bitcoin more as a fringe movement. Or something that technologists and hackers and gamers might know about, but maybe not the general public. And today, you have articles in the Wall Street Journal. You have statements from government on these issues. So it was really a different landscape, I would say, 6 months ago, 3 months ago, and 6 months ago.
So it was completely unregulated.
It was unregulated, yes. And so our understanding, the public's understanding or the legal understanding of what virtual currencies were a year ago were that it was something like prepaid access. So this was something like a program card manager or an in-game system. So the new regulations or the regulations that now apply to money transmitters are really a new understanding. So before, we said prepaid access, it didn't require all of these state money transmitter licenses. In March, FinCEN came out with a new guidance that clarified how the BSA, which has been in existence for quite some time. So the BSA is called the Bank Secrecy Act, and it's the whole host of laws that apply to banks and other financial institutions. So it's not only the BSA, actually. There's a whole patchwork of federal statutes that apply to banks and what they're required to collect and what they're required to record and report. So, for example, 9/11 changed the whole landscape of even traditional financial institutions. So, there are new requirements in the Patriot Act that were appended to the Bank Secrecy Act to require banks to even collect more customer information. So the BSA really comprises bits of the Patriot Act as well as, the record keeping and reporting requirements under the original Bank Secrecy Act. So these would be applicable to banks. These would be applicable to depository institutions, non-bank financial institutions, payment processors, and the like. So, and we're talking now on the federal level. Of course, in the United States, we have the state scheme. So we have 50 different state laws that may apply, and then you have the federal scheme. So we're talking just purely on the federal level. The federal statutes that might apply to a virtual currency exchange would be the Bank Secrecy Act, sections of the Patriot Act that have been added to the Bank Secrecy Act, which require identifying your customer and obtaining certain kinds of information from them to verify their identity. And then you also have FTC regulations that cover, consumer protection regulations, and various others, but those are kind of the main.
One of your, I guess, major obstacles right now is participating in being regulated, right?
Yes.
How does the government view Bitcoin now, and how would you like them to view it? So
Bitcoin is a kind of virtual currency, as all of you guys know, and frankly, the government doesn't know quite what to do with it. So right now, we're living in an old world. The old financial world, you have things like you have money, you have cash, and then you have checks and money orders, these kinds of payment instruments. And now you're seeing things like prepaid access, like, prepaid debit cards and rewards cards and that sort of thing. And then you also have currency exchange. So, you have different kinds of national fiat currencies. So, right now...
Now, what are fiat currencies?
Fiat currencies are national currencies, like the US dollar or the euro.
So any money that a government controls.
Yes, exactly. So these are the different buckets that the government and these laws understand to govern global currency flow. And Bitcoin doesn't fall easily into any of these buckets. So what the government has really done is put it into the money bucket, but not quite. So they say it's not money, but it's money-like. It's a substitute for money. It has monetary value. So what they're saying is it's a medium of exchange. We don't know quite where to put it, but it's a medium of exchange that acts most like cash, most like money. So that is where we will put it for now.
So who do you need to get on board to make this happen? Make Bitcoin...
Oh.
Can you not talk about that? Is that
no? That's a really great question. I mean, this is, in some ways we're looking at how complicated the federal regulatory bodies work.
Sure.
And they have overlapping responsibilities.
Do they purposefully make that complicated?
I think that each regulatory body has a mandate, right, from Congress on what kinds of markets that they regulate. So you have Treasury, that's really, covers money. And then you have FinCEN, which is a small body within Treasury that covers kind of this financial crimes, terrorist policing. And then you have, the CFTC, which regulates commodities market. You have the SEC, which regulates the securities market. So, some have argued that Bitcoin is not really money or a currency, but it's a high liquidity commodity. So if it were to be put in that bucket, it would be subject to a whole host of regulations. And unfortunately, the way our government works right now is that they don't talk to each other very well.
Right.
And there's always a big land grab for, the jurisdiction over this market or this activity. So it's incredibly complicated. The legal landscape is very complex. And you kind of have to talk to all of these guys and make sure that they understand what Bitcoin is. They understand what your business does. And that you can get some clear answers on how their regulations may apply to your services. And this is, a really, really large undertaking. It takes months to even get a meeting with these guys. And in the meantime, a lot of these businesses are faced with the tough decision of what to do in the interim before they get guidance on how the law applies to them.
Sure.
So in many ways, FinCEN, so you talked about where Bitcoin has been and where it's going. So in the past, Bitcoin was more of this kind of fringe movement, and now it's kind of entered the mainstream. You have Amazon, fulfillment service merchants now accepting Bitcoin. WordPress is accepting it. Reddit is accepting it.
OkCupid, I think.
OkCupid, that's right. Yeah. That's right. So, people are starting to wake up, and they're realizing that this can actually have a really major role in our financial system. So, the government has, not paid attention to this space for a while, and now they're suddenly waking up and saying, oh, this is actually a very useful medium of exchange that people are starting to use, and it's entering this global currency flow. We need to do something about it. So they came out with this guidance in March, and what the guidance was FinCEN, which is the regulatory body within Treasury that has the mandate to interpret and administer the Bank Secrecy Act as it applies to banks and other institutions. They came out with some guidance in March to try to clarify how the BSA and other laws may apply to virtual currencies.
So any virtual currency, not just Bitcoin. They didn't target anyone particular.
No, they put.
So this applies to Facebook credits, or does it work that way as well?
So they try to segregate, in their opinion, a set of rules that may apply. They try to distinguish what they call a centralized virtual currency, like a closed loop system like World of Warcraft Linden dollars, and then decentralized virtual currencies like Bitcoin and Ripple and Litecoin.
Okay.
Now the truth is, we know that World of Warcraft, you can easily switch it for a fiat currency. You can buy it on eBay for dollars.
Sure.
So it's actually a fiction, and they try to retain that, in my opinion, because they don't want to piss off Facebook or Zynga or those guys. So it's kind of a way, a nice trick to try to have a set of laws that apply to Bitcoin and Ripple, but not affect Amazon coins, Facebook credits, and that kind of those kinds of systems.
So what can people do now in order to help fight, or fight for Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Right.
So right now we're on the cusp of a really, really exciting time. People are waking up, and there's a critical mass forming around the potential of Bitcoin. It's no longer this hacker technologist movement that's used for black market goods through the Silk Road. Now we're seeing really legitimate players taking Bitcoin seriously. So I think that the best thing that the community can do is to make sure that they are presenting themselves as legitimate players.
Now, when you say community, you mean the exchanges or the people that are using Bitcoin, like me, like everyday people?
Everyday people have a chance to affect this market. For example, one big misnomer is that we were just at the Bitcoin 2013 Foundation or conference, and it was kind of shocking to see how misunderstood people were about the laws. The laws apply to any activities directed to U.S. customers. So if you are depositing your coins with a foreign exchange, they are subject to the BSA no matter where they're located, and their funds can be seized at any moment if they are not following the law. So what the FinCEN guidance did was it came out right away and said, hey guys, you guys are not exempt from the laws that apply to financial institutions, and you got to do this. And then they started cracking down. You saw Mt. Gox Dwala, you saw Liberty Reserve, you've seen a number of exchanges now. Mt. Gox is now no longer allowed to operate in Australia. They're really cracking down. They're saying we're serious about this.
Right. So are they saying we're serious in a way that prohibits people from using Bitcoin, or they're serious about everyone participating in being completely legal?
That's a great question. One great thing that came out of the FinCEN guidance is that the U.S. government came out and said, we recognize you guys as a legitimate medium of exchange. Because you are legitimate mediums of exchange, because you actually have monetary value.
Right. You kind of have to play by the rules.
You have to play by the rules,
right.
Exactly. And frankly, if there was a business holding billions of dollars of customer funds, in the United States, I would hope that they're following some sort of rule.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So it makes sense on one end. So what they're saying is, here, you guys are players, but you got to follow the rules. Here are the rules. We're going to start enforcing them. So it's great. It gives a clear roadmap of what we can do, at least in the interim, to comply with the rules. Of course, the barriers to entry are very high. The rules are hard to follow. But what we can do is we want to increase the legitimacy of Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, as a global medium of exchange. So, support exchanges that are operating under the law, to spread the ecosystem by, being able to educate, merchants and institutions on what virtual currencies do, and to spread the widespread adoption. So this whole system really rises and falls with widespread adoption. And that's not going to be accomplished, especially given how much visibility it has now, without people following the rules and being legitimate players. So, for example, there are a lot of exchanges right now that don't require you to submit your name and your address. And those exchanges are operating illegally in the United States. We're talking about the United States, which is the biggest market, but only one geographic area. So these exchanges are operating illegally, and the more you support them, the more you put your own funds at risk,
right.
And the more you're showing regulators and lawmakers that these exchanges don't need to follow the rules.
Okay.
And one thing that exchanges and payment services can do on their end,
right.
is to foster community with their users.
Yeah.
So really be available. I think we saw with Mt. Gox, the common complaint that we had, besides the regulatory issues, was that they weren't available to their users. If you had an issue with the exchange, you wouldn't hear back from them. So really focusing on that two-way system of being available, some level of transparency, so that users feel comfortable sharing that kind of information.
Do you feel like your users right now are pretty active in trying to get the word out there that Bitcoin is something that people should be using? I mean,
well, we're in beta right now,
right.
So we beta.kraken.com. We're available for people to try funding money accounts, and we went to the conference when I was at the conference, I met several people who are heavily involved in Bitcoin that absolutely love the exchange. And I think that they're central players, people that are really involved in trading and want to try lots of different exchanges. They're the ones who are giving a lot of energy to the ecosystem of Bitcoin, to the community. So I feel pretty good about the users that I've had interactions with. And we are getting lots of support questions already and starting dialogue. So very excited about that.
One more thing. Can I contact my local politician and say, hey, like, how can I help? Or how can, on a city level or state level, who do I contact? Is there a local Bitcoin magistrate somewhere that I can? I mean, how do I use my votes to help?
Right. You vote with who you choose to do business with, and you vote with who you choose to speak with. So you can write letters to your local representative talking about the benefits of Bitcoin or other virtual currencies in your own business or in your own life. You can come and join us. We are starting a lot of initiatives here out of San Francisco. We're forming a coalition of virtual currency and emerging payments players. We welcome the public to join that dialogue.
Do you have a site or something you'd like to plug?
We're in the naming stages right now. So
Nice.
you can always field questions to me at Constance at Payward.com. I'm
Great.
happy to talk about this and to feed it to the appropriate bodies. But right now it's about spreading adoption, talking about it, educating your friends, your family, telling your family and your friends about it.
Bitcoin right now to a lot of people's minds, it's still this very murky thing. Yeah. And I think people still kind of associate it with some crazy technology they don't understand and therefore is dangerous to them in some way. So I think the more we can get the word out as to how it actually works and how it was created because it's beneficial. So.
I mean, there was a great piece in Forbes recently on the Swift conference in Belgium where they had a huge 8-foot screen of Bitcoin transactions happening in real time where you could really see every second what was going on.
Yeah.
And that those kinds of the fact that those kinds of publications are now taking this up, I think present an opportunity to share this in a very neutral way, to show here are the benefits, here's the public waking up and taking this seriously. So use Bitcoins, talk to your friends and family about it, write to your local representatives about it. Join one of the meetups here in San Francisco. I think you run one.
Yeah.
Think of ways to use Bitcoin, different types of services you can create if you have a technology that you want to.
Ask your favorite stores.
Yeah.
If they'd be willing to take Bitcoin.
So do you do outreach, like as a community manager? This question is to you, actually. So do you do outreach, and how has that reception kind of been right now, presently?
I would say right now, where I'm at is I'm still kind of reaching out to the Bitcoin community as is, and then just in my spare time, where I just go around and kind of perfect my rap about Bitcoin as I go in terms of, talking to merchants, talking to friends, making sure that I can clarify who I'm speaking to, what they're going to need and what they can get out of it,
Do you go and order coffee, and then when it comes to you, you're like, well, I'd like to pay with Bitcoin, and then they're like, we don't accept Bitcoin, and what is Bitcoin? And then you explain it to them, and you say, well, I can't pay for it now.
That's a fantastic technique, and I'm going to start using it. But I do ask people if they accept it, and then I try to start a dialogue.
Yeah, every time you should ask. You should ask if they accept Bitcoin.
I just throw the blockchain wallet up.
Right.
Just hold it right.
Yeah, I just got back from a meeting with Treasury in DC to talk about kind of what the community's intentions are and what we're doing to regulate ourselves on our end and the exciting initiatives that we have on the ground, and they're incredibly receptive, and it doesn't take a trip to Washington though. I was also just on Valencia the other day getting coffee at 4 Barrel, and I walked into that cute little store next door, Accident Artifact. And
but is that the one that sells like just logs and rocks?
Yeah.
But
they're very cool logs and rocks.
Right.
Give them credit where credit's due. And the guy pulled out his phone with a little Square card, and I just asked him, like, hey, we're starting this exchange. Do you know anything about virtual currencies? How would you feel if you had a wallet on your phone and I had a wallet on my phone and I could send money to you without any fees directly? And right now, instantaneously, so it'd be in your account. And he said that would be fantastic. But my older customers are a little afraid of security, and who are they giving their credit card information to, or but if users adopted it, I would love to take that.
So really it's about education right now.
Yeah, it is. And so that's why it's so important to actually be reasonable and complying with the law.
Right.
Because, we can't, if this is going to be widely adopted, the government has to be on board and consumers have to feel safe. So
they have to be on board enough for it to become widely adopted in that process. Keep them happy for the time being and let the technology flourish. We'll see how that changes the regulatory landscape.
Yeah. So what about the future? What would you like to see? I mean, where do we think this is headed?
It's really the Wild West.
Yeah.
I have to say, when I walked into Treasury and I told them, we're really talking about secure, uncounterfeitable, instantaneous global transfer. And talk about frictionless transactions, right? And, their eyes went totally wide. This is a technology that can really help the world. And, this is technology that banks would love to use. And in fact, they can use it by wiring to us and allowing us to do an instantaneous transfer. So, it's... I think the possibilities are really endless. We have 4 billion people who are going to come online, unbanked people on this earth who are going to come online, and they can have a way of holding their hard-earned money that is in a secure location that no government can take away from them, that they can send to the people they love, pay the merchants that they need to pay, and it's incredibly exciting. The internet changed everything, and the financial services sector hasn't innovated in decades. We still take our little paper IOUs called dollars. We go to a bank, they go through their system, and then they have to send it off to another intermediary, who sends it to another intermediary, and days later it may reach your destination. So, I think that it's incredibly exciting. In terms of where we wanted to eventually go, I know that here we're starting this local chapter of virtual currency and emerging payments business leaders, and I've also been asked to co-chair the steering committee on legal regulatory issues at the Bitcoin Foundation, and in conjunction with the two, we're starting a self-regulatory agency, and what we're going to do is have an independent board of directors that are above reproach, of unquestionable legitimacy. And we're talking about, people from the academic space. We're talking about people from traditional payments. We're talking about retired judges and regulators who will implement a strict third-party audit of member businesses.
Okay.
And, each business that wants to be a part of this self-regulatory organization would have to go through this vetting process to make sure that they can ensure the integrity of their funds, that they know who their customers are, where their funds are coming from. Now, it's important to note that this isn't information that's shared with necessarily the government or anybody else. It's just that if we're going to be handling, millions and billions of dollars, we need to know who we're dealing with and whose money it is.
Yeah.
Does
something like that already exist within the government for like banks or other exchanges?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what you're doing is you're trying to set up some type of infrastructure that already kind of mimics what legitimate or regulated exchanges already do.
Yes, exactly. So the truth is the government doesn't quite know what to do with us and how to regulate us. So the more we can provide that framework, create a standards body that really makes sense for us and for our users, and present that to the government as being, reputable and dependable gateways to the global currency system. The more the government's going to say, okay, you guys have this under control. We don't need to insert ourselves, and police you guys on this minute level and go on these, goose chases to catch the outliers. You guys are going to be policing yourselves and regulating yourselves. So this has been a model that has worked in really complex markets like the securities market and the commodities market. And that's why you have, bodies like FINRA or the National Futures Association. And essentially they work with the government regulatory bodies to make sure the standards make sense for the businesses. So this is a way of being able to control the dialogue, to set standards that make sense for our users as much as for ourselves, because our users are really our backbone. So that's kind of the direction that we're going. In the long term, I really see us moving from a banking system where we have bank accounts to to wallets, where we have personal wallets that we can use and spend as we will and send money as we will instantaneously, securely. And, it's a really exciting prospect. It really has a chance to unlock the currency flow that's been limited to these bodies that take a cut of it along the way, to just you and me being able to transact on an arm's length basis.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So the future community stuff, is there?
Oh gosh.
I mean, how does that work? I mean, where are your users headed?
I'm at the phase right now where I am reading the forums. I'm just reading the forums and kind of getting a sense of what people are looking for. And I'm reaching out to users to say, what do you want from an exchange right now? And the main answers that I'm getting is that support available and the ability to take their money out when they need it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the regulatory standards come in and making sure we're complying 100%. And in terms of the roadmap, it's all dependent on how Bitcoin is adopted and what sectors it's adopted in. So it's kind of fun because I could just figure it out as I go along and spread the word and kind of evangelize a little bit in my work. Yeah.
Okay, well, certainly a ton of food for thought. So thanks for joining us, Constance, Choi.
Thank you.
And Ruby Kalson-Bremer.
You got it.
Yeah, yay. All right. So basically takeaways are stay educated, educate others, be the evangelist that Bitcoin needs.
Yes.
Do good with Bitcoin. So thanks for joining us for another episode of Techendo. Thanks for my guest.
Thank you.
You are awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. And we'll see you next time. Okay, bye.
Bye.